Good morning, everyone. Fiscal Snapshot Day. There's no confidence vote needed, no budget, no anything. We're just going to get a look at the finances of Will Ferrell lookalike Bill Morneau, Panama Papers extraordinaire. Yep, he looks like Will Ferrell. Here's Aaron Werdick, and he says March 27th had $112 billion as our deficit. April 9th, 184. April 30th, 252. It's getting worse. Here's the article. This is from the Financial Post. Trudeau can't blame his mega deficit entirely on the pandemic. Now, this is an opinion article. The actual snapshot is being released later today, so I won't spend too much time on it. This is just somebody's opinion. Quick. Today, the Trudeau government presents a snapshot of federal finances that is likely to blame this year's historic federal deficit on COVID-19 and the recession. That's only part of the story. The rest is, it's Stephen Harper's fault. No. Back to the article. The federal government shouldn't be allowed to escape responsibility for its deficit-prone spending and borrowing decisions pre-COVID-19 and recession. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, PBO, this year's deficit will exceed $250 billion. Well, yeah, we hit that in April, right? That was 250, right? So we've had a couple of months since then. Exceed $250 billion. Representing almost 12% of Canada's economy. In other words, the federal government plans to borrow the equivalent of 12% of the total value of all goods and services produced in Canada this year, and to do so with the national debt approaching $1 trillion. We did not reach this extraordinary level of borrowing due solely to COVID-19 and the recession. In reality, as outlined in a recent study, Ottawa's spending and borrowing problems predate the current crisis. Had the Trudeau government instead followed the fiscal policies of the Chrétien government and run small surpluses, we would have entered the recession with roughly $95 billion less in federal debt. I'm not sure why he chose the Chrétien government. Like Martin, Harper, both more recent, Chrétien? I'm not sure why. I mean, I guess maybe he's more fiscally responsible, but why would you just pick him? If they followed Mulrooney's plan, irrelevant? I don't know. Anyway, Edmonton police. So yesterday I was talking about how Toronto police did not defund their police. Edmonton police did. Yep. Edmonton City Council approves police reform motion, including $11 million budget cut over 2 years. Great. Wonderful work. Edmonton isn't the place with all those gang swarmings and the bombings that were happening a few years back? You know what we need? Less police. Awesome. Really great job. And it's funny too, because police budgets are usually hard fought for. They need them and they prove they need them by, the community expanding and the area that they're serving increasing and the number of population increasing, etc., growth of a community, all that stuff. And now the idea that police are somehow racist in Canada, which is not borne out by the facts. It's not borne out by the numbers. Not in the RCMP, not in community police services, because they stopped calling them forces more than 10 years ago. It's not borne out in the fact. But now they're saying, and politicians are getting on board that, yes, we've got to get rid of that $11 million. And if you think that $11 million is going, that's a chest of money that's sitting around somewhere, you're just sadly mistaken. I did a report yesterday on municipalities being broke, dead broke. We don't have any money. We have to talk about laying people off. And that's talking about unions. And one of the last things to be cut from the municipal budgets, I'm sure, would be policing. But in this situation, they're trying to prioritize it, right? And even in Guelph, the police are on a 0% budget increase this year to virtue signal, because that's what politicians have to do these days. Oh, BLM. It doesn't matter. And people were saying, why don't you report on the fact that donating to Black Lives Matter donates money to the Democrats? That's kind of outside of what I do. I kind of look at Canadian politics. If BLM were funneling to liberals, then yeah, I'd be all over that. But they're funneling to Democrats. And while it's kind of two sides of the same coin, I think that Justin Trudeau borrows policy and playbook ideas from Barack Obama's Democrats, because they're still Barack Obama's Democrats. Hillary didn't win, so they're not hers. And Biden's senile, right? Not to go off on the United States too much, but that's not what I do, right? I don't really talk about I talk about the United States if it's going to really impact Canada. But this BLM funding stuff, it doesn't really impact Canada, not in a meaningful way, except that if Biden gets in, what Justin Trudeau is doing to Canada will seem not all that bad compared to what he'll do to the United States. And I mean, I wish Trump would punch back. I wish he would punch back. I know he's got ammo. I don't know what he's waiting for. I understand that it's not my call to make. I get that. I know that. But man, what kind of country is going to be left if he doesn't punch back, right? If you promise arrests for 4 years and then you don't arrest anybody, and you're Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump gets shit done, right? Love him or hate him, he gets shit done, right? If he says he's going to build a wall, he's building a wall. If he says he's going to put up a big Trump tower with gold letters on it that says Trump, he's done that. So, I mean, he gets shit done for as far as I can see. And so, I mean, this money, back to what I was saying before, this money is not sitting in a pile of a chest or some back room of the city hall. The money is gone. The money never existed in the first place. The money existed on paper for payroll, right? Like, and the COVID-19 and the lack of revenue and all of that stuff has municipalities seriously looking at raising taxes, right? There's a whole lot more to this story than defunding police, and it is the destruction. They're not going to reallocate this money to social workers. You're not going to get 10 social workers for 10 cops. I'm sorry, it's just not going to work. Even though social workers would cost less and not carry guns, you're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. Nobody is doing that. Not the bean counters, not the mayors, not the city councilors, not the police chief. Nobody is. There's no police chief of social workers. There's no social worker chief going, great, the police are gone. Let's get in there and fix this place. We'll clean this mess up. People who think that are delusional. Absolutely, completely delusional. Social workers are imperfect humans, just like you, just like me, just like mental health workers and jail guards and cops too. Grow up. Whole freaking country needs to grow up. Moving on. The Edmonton Eskimos did a study in February, and they will not change their name. They will not change their name, despite their sponsors saying you have to change your name. There was a thing released yesterday saying we're not going to sponsor the Edmonton Eskimos until they change their name. But they did a survey in February with the Inuit leaders, and the Inuit leaders were like, nah, that's cool. Go ahead. I also read a study about Indian or Native people's response to the Redskin name, and they were like, yeah, whatever. The cancel culture, the woke culture is being offended for somebody. They could be offended by that. Somebody could be offended by that. There are Eskimos. They could be offended. Oh my goodness. And then, they don't bother to ask. They don't bother to verify their projection. They just decide to act on it, right? Here's this. Remember the vandals who painted over that street art yesterday? It's sad that you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's just crazy. Inversion. They've been charged. So breaking, the Martinez couple caught on video painting over the approved Black Lives Matter mural on 4th of July are being charged with a hate crime, according to a release from the my goodness, that's hard to say. The district attorney's office. Apparently, I didn't know that it was a mural. Like maybe they paid for people to put that up. Okay, right. If that's a mural, then it's a little bit of a different story. But the original one that was painted on the sidewalk in Washington was done by the mayor with the city's approval, like with the mayor's approval. So it was done by city work trucks and stuff. But I didn't know the inception of this. But isn't this whole thing interesting, right? And vandals, street art. My goodness, where does it end? And is it precedent setting? In this situation, maybe not. Maybe they are vandals if it really was street art. But I don't know all the context, so I apologize yesterday if I misreported that. But they've been arrested, or charged, not arrested. Here is This is a really interesting story, moving back into Canada. And, Brian Lilly did some research, and he got responded to by a lawyer, which is odd, right? So this is Toronto Sun. Brian Lilly says, maybe we should have been looking at We Charity earlier. In a matter of weeks, We Charity, the group formerly known as Free the Children, has gone from untouchable to an organization under siege. No wonder they reacted the way they did to my very basic questions about their very vast real estate holdings. More on that and the email from a defamation lawyer in a moment. If you haven't been following the news, we burst into the headlines for all the wrong reasons when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that the group would receive a sole source contract worth $912 million on June 25th. Part of that contract would see we take more than $19 million in administration fees for setting up what are described as volunteer opportunities, even though everyone would get paid and not get paid minimum wage. The cozy relationship between we and the Trudeaus, the PM, his wife, and his mother, have received platforms on the We stage, and Sophie Trudeau hosts a podcast for them, led to plenty of questions. Turns out more questions than that either the government or we were comfortable with, and the contract was cancelled. Led to plenty of questions. Turns out more questions that either the government or we were comfortable, and the contract was canceled last Friday. That hasn't stopped the questions. There have been all sorts of media reports on problems in the organization, from board members resigning, staff quitting, police investigations into senior staff in Kenya, and more recently, former members claiming that working at We does not match the public image of the group. Now, MPs have voted to demand the contract with the organization be released by August 8th. Now, I thought that We had already terminated the contract. I thought they walked away. So why would it need to be released by August 8th? I thought it was done already. I thought that was that. Strange. I'm going to keep my eye on that. I went to the more pedestrian route and started to look at We finances. This is Mr. Lilly again. No, not the many other government contracts ranging from $25,000 to $3 million each, but rather their large real estate holdings. According to We's filing to the Canada Revenue Agency, the organization went from total fixed assets of $11.9 million in 2013 to $43.7 million in land and building holdings in Canada alone by the end of August 2019. That's a substantial amount of real estate for a group with total revenues last year of $65.8 million. It's also quite the growth in holdings over 7 years. I put some of the questions I could think of to We's public relations team. How did We amass so much real estate? Are donors made aware that money they have pledged to We has helped pay for real estate to be purchased? Can you provide me a detailed list of the real estate holdings of We? How much real estate does We own outside of Canada? These are the kinds of basic questions that journalists put to governments and organizations every single day. Normally, a communications staff member would get back to you with an answer or seeking clarification. I heard back from We's defamation lawyer, Howard Winkler. Brian, please be advised that we are counsel to We Charity in relation to the matters which are the subject of your inquiry. In nearly 20 years of doing this job, I can't recall ever getting a response to basic questions from someone whose signature states in bold letters that they are a defamation lawyer. Quote, I asked a question about real estate listed in public CRA filings. Why is a defamation lawyer responding to me? I asked Winkler. In many cases, we handle responses to media inquiries on behalf of our clients. Nothing more is to be read into our standard email signature, Winkler replied. Excuse me if I don't believe him. Me either. The only reason I've ever been contacted by a lawyer is to try to use the threat of a lawsuit to stop questions the organization doesn't like. I can't say that We has done anything wrong in order to amass their real estate holdings. The truth is, I don't know. What I do know is that having your defamation lawyer respond to media questions sure looks like an attempt to intimidate me into not asking more questions. I think we should all have been asking questions about We and their founders, Mark and Craig Kielberger, a lot sooner than we did. Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting bit of information, having the enrichment of We coincide kind of with Justin Trudeau's rise to power, right? 2013 is an okay starting point at 11.9 million, but to increase that 6 times, right? 6 times, almost exactly. Maybe not quite. That's quite the feat for 6 years, right? That's a lot of investment. Where did they get the money? Is it all on the backs of donations? How did they do that? Very interesting rabbit hole to go down. Good job, Mr. Lilly. Moving into COVID-19 and the last bit of the stories today. Well, there's 2 more. COVID and all the mask wearing and such. Yesterday, I saw this 19 hours ago. CTV News is saying pandemic accelerating. Global peak still to come. Who, Chief? You know, he's never been wrong, this guy. Oh. Mr. Tedros, Dr. Tedros, yeah, He's bang on, PhD doctor, top of the cream of the crop of the Chinese WHO. He says exactly what China wants. It's very interesting. Like, I don't understand, and I'd love to understand the rationalization for talking about, like, now it's increasing, now it's picking up speed, now. I don't think there's any kind of data that backs that up, but. Here's the Ontario government reacting as if that were true. Premier Doug Ford's office says the government wants to extend the state of emergency to ensure there's no gap between the declaration ending and a new bill extending Ontario's emergency measures to take effect. Yeah, they want. I tweeted about this yesterday. This is in the article. What they want to do is they want to take away the ability, or they want to continue to have the ability to limit social gatherings, and they want to take away the union's right and ability to negotiate and continue to put nurses and doctors where they see fit. I think it is not a great idea. I think moving the emergency orders into regular law is just a power grab. And I know Ford's taking criticism on this, and he's saying that it's not a power grab, that he wants to keep people safe, and that's his fundamental motivation and all of that stuff. And I just don't myself, I don't see the rationalization for this. And here's an opinion piece that goes through the Ottawa areas, and it says the Ottawa numbers don't support the need to mandate face masks in Ottawa. The same is true in Guelph. We're seeing declining cases. We're seeing a declining death rate from the highs of when the long-term care places were hit hard. We're seeing fewer cases per day. I said declining cases already, but those things combined say this thing's slowing down. There's lots of graphs you can look at that show we're certainly on the other side of the downward curve now. So when they closed this down in March 17th and said 2 weeks and, we'll see where we're at and blah, blah, blah. And now we're seeing success and we're getting mandatory masks in a way that doesn't make sense. The masks are not helpful to prevent virus. The virus is too small, and cloth masks, if you exhale, it may block the small droplets, but the virus can travel in your exhalant, and it's 1 micron big. The masks don't stop anything, right? So you're just putting out virus. And I've read a lot about this. I've talked about how hard it is to find the real data about this, and if there is real data about this out there, it's as muddy as they can make it, and it's hard to find. So, if you want to wear a mask and believe that wearing a mask is like the best thing to do to protect yourself against COVID-19 and other coronaviruses or airborne flus or whatever, go nuts. There's a ton of people on YouTube that say that it's just fine and totally healthy, but every single recommendation, every single certification, all the 3M masks, all of those things have very clear warnings. So, I don't know. It seems really strange to have this power grab and the mask thing happening in month 4, right? A month after opening up phase 2. Why the mask thing? Why? It doesn't help anybody. Anyway, here's the Ontario set to extend some emergency orders until next year. Ontario introduced new legislation Tuesday to enable the extension of some pandemic emergency orders over the next year, a move an opposition critic said could curb checks on the power granted to the government. Quote, "It allows us to transition away from the declaration of emergency, which is an important signal to people we're on our way out," she said, "but it also allows us to ensure that because, frankly, we don't have a vaccine for COVID-19, that we can still keep in place the important tools we need. Under current legislation, the province can only issue emergency orders while the state of emergency is in place. Ontario's state of emergency is set to expire July 15th, and Premier Doug Ford's office said it would introduce a motion Wednesday to extend it until July 24th to ensure that there is no gap between the provincial declaration and when the new bill takes effect. Based on current public health trends, we expect this to be the final extension of the provincial declaration of emergency," spokeswoman Ivana Yelich, excuse me, I forgot that wrong, said in a statement. The legislation would allow the government to move parts of the province back to earlier stages of the pandemic lockdown if required. It could also continue the redeployment of healthcare staff and change public health orders limiting social gatherings. Emergency orders that permit the pickup and delivery of cannabis and prohibit price gouging on essential goods will not be included in the bill and will expire next week. Ontario's first declared a state of emergency March 17th when the province's COVID-19 cases began to increase. But they didn't do anything meaningful to stop landing flights internationally from infected areas. They didn't do anything meaningful to contact trace. And now they're saying mandatory masks and contact tracing for the public? No, I don't believe them. And here's the Ottawa Citizen, Delaney, making a case that the numbers don't bear the need for this. Numbers don't support the need to mandate face masks in Ottawa, and I think that's true across the province. The decision to make masks mandatory in Ottawa and Eastern Ontario seems quite popular, but it's challenging to identify the serious local problem that prompted the move now, or the gains that are likely to result from it. Masks do have some preventative value. Most people wear them. I do too. I don't. The author article does. When an individual chooses to wear a mask, it's a simple act of courtesy to others. Really? I'm going to impair my breathing for you. No, sorry, man. When public health officials mandate the use of masks, it suggests that everything we've done up to now is still not enough and that there is a big, scary problem out there that's not supported by the facts. If there was a time to make masks mandatory, it was a month ago, when stage 2 of the economic restart allowed a wide range of retail businesses to reopen. We weren't sure what would happen, but now we have a month of results, and they're outstanding. Over the last month, Ottawa's virus testing has never identified a daily community case count beyond a single digits, and there were only 2 days when the daily number was greater than 5. That's not to say that there were no unidentified cases, of course, but it's a good indicator that the problem is small. The COVID-19 numbers in the 3 adjoining areas that have implemented the mask ban are even better. Renfrew County currently has 2 identified cases, both in self-isolation. Over the entire course of the pandemic, there have been only 12 cases of community transmission. The Eastern Ontario Health Unit has been averaging 1 or 2 cases a day since mid-May and has had none for a week. Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark had 2 active cases and scarcely any over the last month. How much better do public officials think it can get? Right, and how much are they willing to give up the public's general health? Because there are consequences to wearing these things. Here's CTV News saying, refusing a mask should be as taboo as drinking and driving, leading scientist says. Their experts are getting worse and worse. And this is just social engineering, making sure that you comply with their order. This is not law, and it is not healthy. It is very, very stupid and not backed up by the facts. And here is more shaming, more mask shaming. Andrew Scheer spotted without a mask at Toronto's Pearson Airport. Updated Manitoba Premier Brian Pollister's statement on the mask photos. Brian Pollister says, I lifted my mask to join some friends in conversation at the Toronto airport this afternoon. It was an error on my part. It won't happen again. Please don't come for me, woke left. Please, oh goodness me. I couldn't possibly, oh. Really? Really? Seriously? And what about We Charity, the news? Here's Anthony Koch, and he says, the fact that Andrew Scheer will be more heavily criticized for not wearing a mask while sitting in an airport terminal than Justin Trudeau will for the whole We Charity debacle demonstrates everything wrong with Canadian media. Sure does. Sure does. This is not a story, but I saw more stories about this yesterday evening than anything on We Charity. And the We Charity has a lot to dig into. There's a lot to dig into. Just the money. Follow the money. Follow the money. And nobody cares. It's really, really, and when I say nobody cares, you bring it to the people who should care, and they go, I wonder if this contravenes a policy. Do you think it contravenes a policy? And then you say, yeah, it contravenes these 4 laws. Oh, I'll have to look at that. And then they never get back to you, right? So, or they send their lawyer to get back to you, and the lawyer says, don't read into this. Because when you hear that, I mean, that's also, right? If you read between the lines, right? It's a very, very sticky situation this whole country's in right now. The last story is one I'll just give you the synopsis of. This is an interesting thread. Paul Manning came across my Twitter feed because somebody retweeted him, and I hadn't seen him before, so I'm following him now. Very interesting stuff. He's a former cop, and he says, want to know what happens when scores of officers from several departments get caught using and dealing steroids? In 2009-10, I was approached by an informant, Steve, who wanted to tell me of cops at my service using and dealing steroids. I didn't put him on the books because I just didn't trust anyone enough because it was against cops, so I kept my investigation off the books. Spending my days off watching cops hang with my main target, Rainer Ruska, spinning around in $500,000 sports cars. After a few months, Steve came with further intel that a Toronto cop was also selling Glocks to gangbangers. Background revealed this cop worked in the armory, meaning he could easily write off parts, rebuild a gun at home, and sell it. This forced my hand, and I put together an intel report submitting it. I checked, and within the week, the Toronto cop had been moved out of the armory. Steve approached me again and asking to become a paid agent, but specifically asked that he not be handed off to 2 cops who would kill him if they found out he'd turned. I handed him off to Intel, who indeed handed him off to those 2 cops. In 2011, one of the cops ordered me into a meeting. I didn't want to talk because I knew the project, now named Project Newton, had still to be taken down, and I suspected this cop of involvement. After 15 minutes of threats of violence, he disclosed Steve had shot himself. I kept quiet. When done, I went to the incident report and read the statement of the cop that found Steve. He entered the scene, cleared the gun, and placed it in the back of his cruiser. Cops reading this know you don't do that. You leave the scene for homicide. This cop, well, coincidentally, that's the second cop Steve said would kill him. Project Newton was taken down and resulted in the seizure of numerous drugs, but most importantly, $3 million worth of meth. I waited for news of pending cop arrests, and just one, a cop who was already on his way out for stealing drugs from evidence. Then cops from my service started to approach me. The first denied everything and told me he'd been informed that I was the rat. The second admitted everything and told me how stupid he'd been. Also told me someone from Intel told him I was the rat. He went on that everyone involved had been given written warnings for trafficking. I went to Intel, and this was confirmed by my source. That means cops caught trafficking had a note applied to their file. It also means the police chiefs from several services from Toronto down to Niagara conspired to hide trafficking offenses committed by subordinates, a criminal offense in itself. It was 2012 by the time I ID'd the supplier, another cop, of course. Pointless telling my bosses, but someone made an anon call to the U.S. Homeland Security, and PC Purdy was arrested, leaving the U.S. with steroids. There you have it, hundreds of officers trafficking, using, and unwittingly but subsequently assisting in the supply of meth, destroying our cities, shielded from scrutiny by numerous police services, chiefs, and lawyers. And to those police services, if you don't want me calling you out on your criminality, stop behaving like criminals. Oh yeah, and for the naysayers, all the services involved in this report had officers dealing drugs. And this is a major Hamilton crystal meth bust link, and another one. So it's an interesting report from Paul Manning. Take it with a grain of salt, but my goodness, from Nova Scotia and the RCMP and that systemic rot to potentially Ontario police forces too. It's interesting that we're so focused on systemic racism and we're ignoring the criminal gangs operating within our police forces, right? If you want to defund cops, maybe cut off their criminal revenue streams. No? Oh, we want to leave that. We want to remove the public's funding of cops and then just piss that into the wind, while maintaining the cops' ability to be criminals. Got it. That's the world we're living in, make no mistake. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. I didn't get to record yesterday. I'm planning on recording tomorrow with Kelly. And yeah, that's about it. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.